Today, we are cracking open the human mind, and we're going to find out why so much of what we do, so much of what we feel, is guided by a rulebook that's thousands and thousands of years old. Let's dive in. So, let me ask you something. Why are so many of us absolutely terrified of spiders or snakes, or even just heights, yet we'll hop into a car, which is statistically way, way more dangerous, pretty much every single day without a second thought? It just doesn't make sense, right? It seems totally irrational. Well, it turns out the answer isn't found anywhere in our modern world of traffic and smartphones. To really get to the bottom of our fears, our desires, our social lives, we have to look back. I mean, way back. The key is hidden in the world of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. And this gets us to the absolute core idea of evolutionary psychology. The mind isn't some single, all-purpose computer. It's much more like a specialized toolkit, one that was assembled over millions of years to solve the specific, recurring problems our ancestors faced, day in and day out. Now, the master craftsman behind this toolkit? That's natural selection. It's actually a pretty simple but incredibly powerful process. See, organisms vary. Some of that variation gets inherited. And any traits that help an organism survive and, crucially, reproduce are more likely to get passed down. You let that process run for millions of years, and it designs everything about us, including our mind. So these individual tools in our mental toolkit, they have a name: evolved psychological mechanisms. Just think of each one as a little specialized program. It takes in a very specific piece of information, like the sight of a coiled snake, and it produces an output that helped our ancestors solve a problem, like that jolt of fear that makes you leap backward without even thinking. So yeah, forget the idea of your mind being like one general-purpose laptop. A much better way to think about it is like a Swiss Army knife. You've got a specific blade for cutting, a corkscrew for, well, you know what that's for, and those tiny little scissors for small tasks. Each tool has a very specific job, and our mind is just packed with these ancient, specialized mental tools for surviving and reproducing. So what were these ancient problems? Well, the first and most fundamental challenge was just staying alive. The world was full of hostile forces, and you can bet that natural selection favored those who were programmed to be a little bit cautious, a little bit jumpy. And this brings us right back to that puzzle we started with. Our most common phobias are like a perfect map of ancestral dangers. For literally millions of years, snakes, spiders, and falling from high places were deadly, everyday threats. Cars and guns, they're brand new. They're far too recent for evolution to have had time to write a specific fear program for them in our brains. It's not just about what we're born fearing. It's also about what our brains are sort of pre-wired to learn. There's this classic experiment where rats that got sick after eating a new food learned to avoid that food forever, and they only needed one bad experience. But, and this is the crazy part, they couldn't learn to associate that same sickness with a sound or a light. Their brains, just like ours, have a super specialized tool for learning "don't eat that," which is a critical adaptation when you're trying not to get poisoned. But hey, survival is only half the battle, isn't it? The next great evolutionary challenge was reproduction. The pressures of finding a mate, attracting them, keeping them, this stuff has profoundly shaped our psychology, creating a whole other layer of tools in our ancestral kit. Darwin himself noticed that males and females often face really different challenges. And because of that, they evolve different strategies when it comes to mating. This one simple observation is basically the key to unlocking a huge range of psychological differences between the sexes. This all happens through a process called sexual selection. Some traits evolved not because they help you survive. I mean, look at this thing, that tail makes it harder to escape predators, but because they are really, really attractive to the opposite sex. An extravagant, costly display like a peacock's tail is basically a giant, flashy billboard that says, "Hey, I have amazing genes." Okay, so what do we humans find attractive? Well, a massive study that looked at 37 different cultures found some amazingly consistent patterns. Because of the incredible costs of pregnancy and raising a child, women evolved to prioritize cues that a man would be able and willing to invest resources, things like status, ambition, and being a little older. Men, on the other hand, faced the challenge of identifying fertile partners, so they evolved to prioritize cues to fertility and health, things like physical attractiveness and youth. And these different strategies create different mental programs, which can lead to misunderstandings. For instance, research consistently shows that men perceive more sexual intent in a woman's actions, like a simple smile or a friendly touch, than women actually intend. Evolutionarily speaking, for a man, the cost of missing a potential mating opportunity was historically higher than the cost of a little social awkwardness. And get this, our mating psychology is incredibly sensitive to context. Researchers discovered something called the closing time phenomenon. As a bar gets closer to closing, men start rating the women who are still there as more attractive. And this happens whether they've had one drink or six. So it's not beer goggles, it's a psychological tool recalibrating as the mating opportunities for the night start to dry up. But we didn't just face the problems of survival and mating all by ourselves. We are intensely social creatures. Living in groups presented its own unique set of challenges, figuring out how to cooperate, who you could trust, and how to climb those tricky social ladders. To thrive in groups, we had to evolve a really sophisticated psychology for cooperation. This includes specialized mental tools for detecting cheaters, those people who take the benefits without ever paying their share. It also includes a deep, deep concern for our own reputation, because being known as a reliable partner was the key to everything. And inside these groups, we humans compete for status using two main strategies. The first is dominance, which is all about fear, intimidation, and force. But the second path is prestige. That's status that's freely given to you by others because they respect your expertise, your skill, or your wisdom. Both can be effective, but they are very different ways to get to the top. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. What does this ancestral toolkit actually mean for us today, living our modern lives? Well, it offers an incredibly powerful new lens for understanding why we think, feel, and act the way we do. And this, right here, is the key takeaway. We are all navigating the crazy modern world of social media, online dating, and global markets with a mind that was forged on the African savanna. So many of our modern problems, from our irrational anxieties to conflicts in our relationships, they all stem from this fundamental mismatch between our ancient psychology and our brand new environment. And that leaves us with a really profound challenge. If our brands are running on this ancient software, how can we get better at navigating our modern world? Understanding this ancestral toolkit doesn't just explain our weird quirks, it gives us the power to be more mindful of our instincts. And maybe, just maybe, it can help us use these ancient tools a little more wisely.